welcome to Newsteam Boulder's 2011 election coverage. I'm Brittany Moore.
And I'm Evan Krugel. As of last night, the Secretary of State's office had received just under 53,000 completed ballots. Hopefully you got yours in on time because it is now 7 o'clock and the county clerk's office is no longer accepting ballots. Boulder County distributed just over 171,000 ballots this year, and there are some interesting local issues on the table. It's Boulder County elections tonight, and we plan to be here for the next 3 hours, providing insight from candidates as well as election results as they filter into us.
Candidates running for the City Council made their way to CU's campus to answer some of the hot topic questions. Newsteam's John Tomasak has more. It's looking like we're having some issues with that package. We're going to move on to the actual candidates of the election. There are actually 13 candidates that were approved to run for Boulder City Council, but only 5 openings for the actual council positions. Although all of the candidates' profile are listed in the Daily Camera, here's a couple of the candidates and some information about them.
Yeah, some interesting information just on a few of these candidates. Fenno Hoffman. Actually, looks like we're going to do Suzanne Jones first right here. Swing it over to Brittany for that one.
Suzanne Jones is a Boulder County veteran. She's been in Boulder for 16 years. She has worked in the Fisheries and Wildlife Subcommittee for the U.S. House of Representatives and says her role model is Nelson Mandela. She does support the energy bill and says that it would create affordable, reliable, and greener control over the energy problem.
Let's take a look now at Fenno Hoffman, another candidate running for council. He was a council candidate back in 2009. He did not get elected then. He attended film school at NYU before eventually settling into a job here in Boulder as an architect. Now, Hoffman wants to lower the costs of doing business locally, which would reduce the need for Boulder to sprawl anymore. Our final candidate that we'll take a look at is Mark Gelband. We'll actually have him here in the studio later on this evening, hopefully around 8:10 or 8:15. Now, Mark spent 20 years in the nightclub industry before getting an MFA at Naropa in writing and poetics. He wants to refocus our commitment to core city services and reverse the trend of downzoning what were once higher density neighborhoods, for example, the Whittier and Goss Grove neighborhoods. Like I said, we'll try to have him in around 8:10 or 8:15 later on this evening.
Well, it certainly looks like we have a lot of great candidates going on. I mean, even ones that are involved in the nightclub business.
Absolutely.
We're going to have some fun people on the city council this year if they are elected. We're going to go back now to the city council package. Again, candidates running for the city council made their way to CU's campus to answer some of our hot topic questions. Newsteam's John Tomasiak has more on this issue. So it sounds like there are some good candidates running for Boulder City Council again, but the biggest news seems to be about the 2B, 2C election ordinance. We have Newsteam's Annie Porritt here to give us more information about this controversial issue. Welcome, Annie.
Yeah, thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know, Boulder voters have been asked to weigh in on issues 2B and 2C, and if passed, this would give the City Council the okay to begin municipalizing and severing its relationship with Xcel Energy. There's been lots of back and forth debate on whether or not this will truly be cost effective for Boulder and if the renewable energy will be sustainable enough for the residents here. I attended a debate last Tuesday that was held in the UMC Glenn Miller Ballroom and was able to speak. To wait and see how they vote though, which will be later.
So now tell us a little bit about what each specific ordinance stands for. So 2B and then also 2C. I know that 2B has an annual tax increase of $1,900,000.
Well, the city maintains that this whole plan won't cost more than $290 million total. Xcel is saying it could cost up to $1.2 billion of taxpayer money. So that's kind of where this whole thing stands right now. It's a lot of money, so people are unsure if they really want to go this route or not. So,
has there been any specific number, or is it just Xcel versus the energy affiliates telling us what kind of financials are expected of this?
I believe it's just Excel versus the affiliate.
Okay.
Now, Annie, a lot of people have expressed worry recently, especially after last week's storm, that if Boulder was to municipalize the energy, that the response in an emergency situation like what we saw last week with the downed power lines, the downed limbs, like it wouldn't be quite as fast as what Excel currently does. Are there any measures in place to make sure that Boulder will be able to keep up and have the resources that Excel currently has?
Well, that's the concern right now, and the city is stating that they are going to hire enough people to be on the job. And as in the package that was rolled, Tim Brown was stating his concern that it's going to take a lot of money to hire people to get to fulfill these jobs when there is an emergency like that, which also, takes more money to create jobs for these people. But an interesting part, Excel has meteorologists working on the job to help direct and predict snowstorms, the consequences, and operations staff. They're trained to deal with this kind of stuff too. So they're kind of worried that the city of Boulder won't have as trained people on the job like this. So I don't know, we'll have to see.
Cool. Thanks, Annie.
Yeah,
That's a
thank
pretty
you.
hot topic issue tonight. We actually have some results coming in right now for the Boulder County, what we were just talking about earlier with the City Council. Suzanne Jones, who we profiled, is currently leading at 13.3% of the total vote. And Lisa Morsel has 13% of the vote at this point as well. That's all we have for you right now. We'll be back at the top of the hour with live results and some more coverage. Stay tuned to Newsteam Boulder's 2011 election coverage.
Welcome back to Newsteam's 2011 Boulder elections. I'm Brittany Moore.
And I'm Evan Krugel. We've got some early returns now for the City Council elections. Suzanne Jones is currently leading the way at 13.4%. Lisa Morsel right behind her at 13%. Oh, actually looks like the number, those are the correct numbers, excuse me. Tim Plass there, fourth on the list. He's actually third at 11.1%. And then George and Ken both tied right about 10%. So Lisa and Suzanne both running away with this one at this point in the competition.
Thanks, Evan. The beginning of November not only brings Boulder County's elections, but also our CU student elections. CU elections have generated a lot of buzz around campus in the last year. In this past spring's election, all records have broke when nearly 10,000 with nearly 10,500 student votes in that spring election. This fall proved to be extremely successful in voter turnout too. More than 6,000 candidates voted in this fall's elections. We have here John Tomaszak, and you are going to give us an update on what's been going on with the elections. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Brittany. I'm John Tomaszak. I'm the co-election commissioner for CU Student Government. This past week, between October 24th and October 28th, was our student government elections. They take place over a 5-day period. They start on Monday at midnight and then go to Friday at 8. We had 2 competing tickets for the 5 CUSG representative at-large spots that were available, and we also had 1 independent for a total of 11 candidates. And then for Arts and Sciences Student Government, we had a total of 10 candidates, 5 from each ticket competing for 5 spots.
Great.
And then we also had 13 spots open in Leeds Council, which is basically the government of the business school. And then there were a total of 17 candidates for those. And then we elected winners and announced the preliminary results on Friday. And it's been very exciting so far. With the turnout of 6,035, we set an all-time record for voter turnout in a fall election, breaking the record in 1990, which was 4,700. So I'm personally very excited about that.
Great, that's awesome to hear. Now, CUSG implements and oversees a $37 million budget. Wow. Part of that is covered by student fees. So can you give us a brief overview of CUSG in general and the different departments within the organization and what they do?
Yeah, there's 3 main cost centers. It's Wardenburg is one of them, the Rec Center is the other, and then the UMC is the third. And then they get majority of the money, and they are also self-sufficient, and they also get a lot of money, like Wardenburg for health insurance. UMC for sales inside the UMC, and then the rec center for rec center memberships. But they get the $37 million, and then it's the CUSG's job to allocate that money between those cost centers and a lot smaller cost centers like the Victims Resource Center, the GLBTQ Center, and student groups as well.
Great. So this year's election consisted of various tickets, including the Pulse, Value, and also independent tickets. Can you tell us a little bit about each of these tickets and why they were so crucial in the election?
Absolutely. The Value ticket is kind of more of your moderate to conservative ticket. They also had a lot of graduate students, which provide more of a moderate view, and then there were some people who work with college Republicans and such in it. And then there was the Pulse ticket, which kind of describes itself as a progressive ticket. And there was Matt Sonnenborn, who was an independent who ran, calling himself Represent, who was a graduate, who was currently a graduate co-senator, and he was seeking re-election for his position. And he ran for independent. He got 520 votes, but just for being one himself, was a really admirable effort.
Great. And it was also a big election in the Leeds School of Business too, right?
Yes. We had about 15% of Leeds business students show up and vote. Only Leeds business students are allowed to vote in that election. And out of the 17 candidates, 13 of them won, including one who formed a ticket together called CEO. There were 3 of them that won, and we're very proud of that. And next semester, we'll have elections from Leeds. Engineering is electing their whole board. Arts and Sciences again, and CUSG, maybe Architecture and Planning.
Great. It's awesome to see all this incorporation of all the different departments. Another question. So we've been hearing updates that there is a possible preliminary election, and there were some complaints from the different tickets this year. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We had complaints in this election. That's why the results are still preliminary. They were due at Tuesday at noon today. But until we go through a whole process with complaints, and then once that process has gone through and we award infractions, and if the tickets are still eligible to be elected, meaning they get under 10 infractions, then the results go final, and then those people are sworn in at the next Legislative Council meeting. We had five complaints during this year's election, and the interesting part was it was the winning ticket Pulse, and then there was one student also that filed 5 complaints against the losing ticket Value. So I mean, that's kind of unheard of, but it's something that there were some serious allegations from election fraud to harassment and discrimination and slander. And those are things a lot of people on this campus, including myself, will take very seriously. And we are having our first hearing about it on Friday in Cobble 235. And then after that, the Election Commission will make a decision, which is actually me right now. Will make a decision regarding those, and they will have the option to appeal to the appellate court. But since there were no complaints filed against Pulse, it looks like they will be finalized once those things run its course.
Great. And then just real quick, the winner was Pulse. What are they wanting to do for the campus?
There's been talk of doing a 24-hour coffee shop for campus, refunding ITP, and then some other things to promote diversity and a more united student government. Great.
Well, thank you so much, John Tomaszak, for coming in again with our CUSG elections. We definitely appreciate having you here.
Okay. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. The Boulder School Board is also up for some change. There are 6 candidates running, and 2 of the biggest races will be for District C and D. Lori Albright is one of the candidates running for District C. Albright is a school board veteran, having served on the Boulder Valley School Board for 4 years. She served as treasurer and chair of the District Audit Committee. She also aided in the campaign for the hotly contested Proposition 103. Evan's going to talk a little bit more about that proposition in a bit. The other candidate was Leisha Connells-Bauer. She's also running against Albright. She has served on the City of Boulder Human Relations Commission and also is a hot candidate for the school board elections. We're going to hand it over now to Evan, who's going to talk about Proposition 103.
Thanks, Brittany. Yeah, Proposition 103 has definitely been a hotly debated topic. It's aimed to offset future school district cuts as decreasing property values reduce local revenues for school districts. But the measure would increase Colorado's income tax from 4.6 all the way up to 5%, and the state sales tax from 2.9% to 3%. The increased revenue would raise about $3 billion through 2017. This would affect kindergarten through 12th grade school district students who would receive about $540 more per student per year to offset the future cuts. Opponents of the bill have said the state will lose close to 120,000 jobs over the next 5 years if the bill passes. Now, an interesting side note on the measure, Brittany, according to Education Weekly, Colorado ranks 40th nationally in per pupil spending, as well as 40th nationally in median student-teacher ratio. Per student, Colorado spends roughly $1,900 less than the national average. We've actually got some results coming in now for Proposition 103, as well as for 2B and 2C, which we discussed earlier. All three of these are very close at the moment. 2B, 52% against to 48% for. 2C, 50.5% against to 49.5% for. And then Proposition 103, really close as well. Currently 51% for and only 49% against. Now, as of this moment, 53,000 ballots have been counted, and the county is projecting about 80,000. So we're well over 2/3 of the way there. That's about all we have now for the 8 o'clock hour. We'll be back at the top of the hour. Thanks for joining us on Newsteam Boulder's election coverage.
Thanks, Michelle. Question 1A is about the sheriff's term limit and is also a hot topic in this year's election. Should question 1A pass, it would allow a candidate for Boulder County Sheriff Department to run for, and if elected each time, to serve a maximum of 4 consecutive 4-term limits. The rejection of question 1A would keep the current 3-term limit for a Boulder County Sheriff's tenure in that office. Supporters for this ordinance say that the question 1A should stay as these should change the term limits, and say that Boulder County voters should be able to decide whether to retain a sheriff and continue their position in office. Only 16 of Colorado's 64 counties still have term limits for their sheriffs. On the flip side, the opposition for this question says that 12 years is long enough, and the current term issue of the present 3-term limit ensures turnover in a particularly important policy-making post. They also say that the 3-term limit allows for fresh ideas in the office.
Boulder voters can also decide whether or not to approve ballot issue 2A, which would enable Boulder to issue up to $49 billion in bonds to pay for capital improvements to the city's infrastructure. Taxes would not be raised if the measure is approved. Opponents say taxpayers could still face interest for the billions over the next 20 years. The total repayment cost could be upwards of $82 million. Proponents of 2A say that it would allow a more effective way of repairing the city's roads and bridges, among other infrastructure, including both police and fire training.
The 2H ordinance is about the corporate personhood. If the ordinance is approved, then the U.S. Constitution will be amended to say only human beings, not corporations, are entitled to constitutional rights. In addition, it would also include language that says money is not speech, and therefore regulating politics and spending contributions would not be correct. If passed, this would therefore mean that political contributions could only be accepted by human beings, not corporations. Supporters for this say that they should focus on the people, not the wealthy corporations. In addition, the opponents say that Boulder should be focusing on local issues, not national issues. This has sparked some heated debate amongst the popular news on Occupy Wall Street, where there's been a lot of hostility towards big banks and Wall Street in general. Boulder will be hosting 3 rallies planned for Occupy Wall Street starting this Friday.
Thanks, Brittany. Now, we do know there are 3 or 4 topics that we did not touch on tonight, so we're going to touch on those briefly now, starting with 2G. Now, 2G is the amendment of the initiative procedures. Basically, this is an organizational amendment with 3 highlights. One would be to increase signatures to just 180 days prior to filing, and for them to be submitted for review prior as well. I'm going to send it to Brittany, who has more information on the 3 others we haven't touched on.
The first one is 2D, and this is the amendment of organizational structure. This would include updates on different titles and also just various lingo within the actual charter. 2E is a change for the penalty if violated for the actual charter. What would happen is the violation penalty would change from $100 to $1,000, definitely a little steeper. Finally, 2F is the last one, and it would be a cleanup charter provision regarding elections. This would update the charter to incorporate current technology and election lingo.
Now we're going to give you guys some results one last time here. 1A is currently passing 60% yes to 40% no, so it looks like Sheriff Joe Pele will be sticking around for a 4th term as the sheriff. 2D is 88 yes to 12 no, 2E 70 yes to 30 no, 2A 74 yes to 26 no, 2F 94, 2G 79 for, and 2H 72 for. So like I stated earlier, the only things on the ballot being voted against currently are 2B and 2C. Everything else is being voted for.
It's definitely a tight race there with 2B, 2C. I'm excited to see what the end results are, hopefully soon. So thank you so much for watching Newsteam Boulder. Again, I'm Brittany Moore, and this is Evan. We're so glad you tuned in. The next cast will be at 9:30, and that'll be our final update for the night. Thanks again for watching. We hope to see you soon.